Good evening. Uh, this is Blacklight on Sports. I'm Dr. Mitchellpalmermcdonald,
This is Charles Hallman.
and today's guest is an educator, a speaker, a coach, a leader, and has been around for quite a while, helping people throughout the Twin Cities. I'd like to welcome Dr. Michael Walker. Welcome, brother.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. A couple of things usually we want to do. What we want to do is have you talk about your journey, all the things that you have done, any highlights of yourself as a maybe growing up in Minneapolis, playing basketball, what those things taught you. Um, talk about your journey.
Oh yeah, for sure. I can definitely do that. I mean, well, like you said, basketball is something that has always been a part of my life. Started out playing when I was first in Indiana. I was born in Gary, Indiana. I didn't move
Okay.
to Minneapolis until about 10 years old. So when I moved to Minneapolis, we moved to the north side and started playing basketball at the different little spots there. So I played for Hospitality House when I first started out.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went on and moved on to Jerry Gamble's because we moved into a different part of the north side. So I was playing at Jerry Gamble's for many, many years. Met some good friends there playing throughout the time there. Played with a lot of probably names that you remember during that time. So like Rashad Rich,
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Williams,
Yes.
Boyd Snoddy.
Yeah.
We were all there. T.J. Richardson. I mean, we had a really good little young up and coming team at Jerry Gamble's for that age group. Chris Rainey was on our team. So it was quite a few guys that we played with.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think about like sports, so one thing that is instrumental for me is that it gave you the opportunity to build relationships and camaraderie with fellow young men trying to do the same thing that you're trying to do. Whether it's obviously we all had NBA dreams of going to the NBA, but you learn how to really work hard, have a commitment to something. You learned how to really communicate with each other. Sometimes not so good, but you learn and grow through those trials and tribulations. But I think that was really like instrumental, just having that crew of guys that you can hang out with. But then after, playing there as a little kid, I went to high school in South Minneapolis. So I ended up going to Roosevelt High School. And, that's where you really start to hone your skills and really start to understand more about the game of basketball and kind of about life. So, I think about my time at Roosevelt, a kid from the north side going to the south side of the city.
Right.
It's a little different.
Yeah. Yeah.
My older brother was a little upset with me because he went to North,
Okay.
Sean Strickland.
John.
So,
Okay.
yep, he was at North, and I chose to go across town to Roosevelt, which was kind of,
Oh, you made that choice.
yeah, I made that choice. Yep, for sure. And the choice is kind of crazy. So, people who know me know the story, but in Gary, Indiana, Roosevelt High School was like the
Yes.
perennial powerhouse in
Yes.
basketball.
Yes.
So as a little kid, I remember going to those Roosevelt games. And so I was like, I'm going to Roosevelt as a kid when I was in Gary. When I moved to Minnesota and found out there was a Roosevelt in Minnesota, I
Mm-hmm.
said, I'm going to Roosevelt. So it didn't even matter, right? I was already going to Roosevelt. But in my house, so it's six kids.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the only Roosevelt Teddy. The rest of them are North Polars. So you can just imagine what type of trash gets talked in the house about, you went to this school, you ain't no true North Sider, all that
Mm-hmm.
good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so that was my decision to go to Roosevelt, and again, a couple guys went over there. So Boy Snoddy from Jerry Gamble's also went to Roosevelt, so he was a North Sider that was over there with us as well. But we had a really good team in high school. I mean, obviously, you all know about that. I played with some really good players: Rob Mestis,
Mm-hmm.
John Thomas, Bebop Walker, Sam Willis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jerry Rose. We had a really good squad that played together. So we was number one in the state my junior year. Um, didn't make it to state though. We took that L to I think that year we lost to Tino Grace on the last second shot. So that was heartbreaking. But again, you learn through the losses too, right? You learn about commitment, you learn about dedication, and you also learn that not everything is going to go your way. And that was like kind of the way that you start to learn about life. Like you still got to put in that work, you still got to put in that effort, even though things may not turn out the way you kind of dream or want them to turn out. But that work ethic can carry you forward throughout life. And so as you start to get older and you start to think about college, well, you're going to have to do some other things besides just play sports. You got to do some academics. And so
Mm-hmm.
that kind of taught us how to do that. Obviously, I haven't really mentioned, but we had some really good coaches along the way.
Mm-hmm.
I had Andy Hightower as a coach when I was over at the Jerry Gamble's Boys and Girls Club. When I got to high school, I had Frank Hinches as the varsity coach. I also had Doug Carter as my JV coach, and then Dennis Stockmo, who was the assistant coach of the varsity. And then he and I ended up coaching together for about 15 or 16 years. I was his assistant after I went and played in college.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man. Now what happened after high school?
Yeah, I tell folks all the time, knowing what I know now, I probably should have never played college basketball. And I say that because I never played AAU. Like it was just kind of starting to really be a thing, I guess, during my time. And we had y'all know the city conference was so strong at that time. There were so many good guards that was coming out during that time. I mean, you had all the guys that was at North, like I said, Chris Rainey, Khalid Elamine, you had Jabbar Washington, Ozzie Lockhart, then you had Washburn, you had Aaron Boone and Byron Suttles, and then you had South with Patrick Williams and Tim Peters and Ron Garrett. Like, it was just guards all over the place. So wasn't a whole lot of space for me to get any playing time, especially at Roosevelt. Like I said, I didn't even start my junior year. I ended up starting, halfway through my senior year. But so I didn't even know, I always had the dream of going to college. But like I said, knowing what I know now, there's no way I should have went to college. But I happened to go to this Future Stars basketball camp down in Iowa, and a junior college in Iowa saw me, and I ended up going down there for 1 year, Waldorf, and I played there for a year. And then Coach Hallman just talked about the time when I was playing in was it the Give and Go League? Is that what it was called then? Yeah, the Give and Go League, and playing on his team, and a couple coaches was there from colleges, and then that's how I got connected with Southwest State, and that's how I ended up going down to Southwest State to finish out my 3 years. But again, just playing and being committed to the game. We always worked out. We always played basketball whenever we had a free moment to to play. And that's kind of what it is. Like, I had Rob Mestis. So he was Mr. Basketball, 1995. So every day I got to practice against him, right? So if you practice against this type of caliber player, it's gonna obviously you're gonna get better at doing that. So that helped me to become a better basketball player, which gave me the opportunity to go play in college. But if we just going off of like how things work now, I don't even know if I would ever been seen based on the AAU scene how it is now today.
Man, how after college, what did you major in?
Majored in basketball. No, I'm just joking. No, I majored in physical education. But I did non-teaching though, because I always wanted to work at the YMCA. So I did some physical education and child development, and so I did some youth. So after I left the college, I worked at the YMCA for 10 years doing youth development work, with that emphasis on sports and
Minneapolis or
yeah,
St.
in
Paul?
Minneapolis. Well, I did Minneapolis first, and then I ended up being over in St. Paul. That's when you and I connected
Right,
again
exactly.
when I was working at the East Side YMCA. And
Yeah.
I did the Black Achievers group at your school, and
Yep.
we kind of collaborated on a lot of different events.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I did that for about 8, 9 years at the YMCA. Really, again, working on young people to help them think about what their future is going to be, right? So what I started to realize is that I had a knack for working with people, for building relationships. And so I leveraged that to work with students, right? And so I was able to share my story and then try to use my story as a blueprint for how they can actualize whatever it is they wanted to be when they grew up. And so that's what I kind of did at the YMCA. So I just created programs and worked through the YMCA to build relationships, build connections, and give students opportunities to see different things. So we took students on the historically Black college tours. We did regular college tours around around Minnesota and the upper Midwest. We did job shadowing opportunities for them. So just things we did. What you want to call it, like I don't want to say volunteer, but we did some volunteer work, but really it was about like giving back, so they understood the value of that they had something to offer. Because too often when we think about students of color, marginalized, minoritized population, they're always the recipients of things. But I wanted them to know that they had value and they had things to offer others, so we would go out and provide volunteering for other groups and other people so that they could see that they had value and they had worth, not that they always had to be recipients of something. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Now, what influenced you to eventually go into teaching?
Yeah. So you know how they say there's always that one teacher that that just knows who you are. And so I didn't Miss Westergreen. So she was a teacher that I had at Roosevelt, my favorite teacher of all time. And when I was coaching, because I came back after college, I came back and coached at Roosevelt with Stockmore. He was the head coach and I was his assistant. And Miss Westergreen was still teaching at the school, and she would come to me after games. Oh, you should work in education, Walker. You would be a really good teacher. And I was like, Miss Westergreen, no way. I do not want to be in the classroom. I'm not. I enjoy my time at the YMCA. I had flexibility to be able to move and do what I needed to do, going into schools and supporting students. But I just couldn't see myself like kind of like locked in a classroom was kind of what I felt like it. But she kept working on me, and eventually, her doing that and meeting another gentleman by the name of Jim Birma doing some youth programming at one of the middle schools in St. Paul. He was like, "You would be a good counselor." And so that's how I got into education. I went back and got my master's in counseling at UW River Falls, and so from there I had to do my practicum hours, and I did them at Roosevelt, and then that's how I got hired at Roosevelt to be a counselor in the building. So that's kind of how I got into education. Like I always say, through the back door. I'm a non-traditional educator, but it was the value of the teacher who saw something in me and kept kind of being on me, like Walker, you would be good. You would be good with these students. You would be good to do the, excuse me, to do this. And so that really kind of pushed me to go into that field. And now, I enjoy it and I'm doing a lot of different things in the education field.
Now you was on the forefront of the time when the Minneapolis school district was seriously looking into why black males were not being educated properly, or they was failing, or whatever, how you want to use that. And you was on the forefront of that with the Black Male Achievement Office. Talk about that, how that came about and how you got involved with that.
Yeah. So again, my thing about life is that how do you always be prepared for the opportunities that may come your way, right? And so, again, the work that I did at the YMCA, when I was a counselor at Roosevelt High School, I did specific work around making sure that Black students had opportunities to visit colleges, had opportunities to apply and learn about scholarships. So I was very intentional about those things. And then when I became an assistant principal at Roosevelt High School, I also did some things that was really around taking care of our Black and brown students because they were getting missed in the shuffle, right? And so I brought in different speakers, different groups. Steve Floyd is a person that you all know that came in and did some work in our schools. I had Dr. Corey Yeager come in and do some work with students in our schools. And so I was doing these things, and somehow, some way, that information got back to, at the time, Superintendent Bernadette Johnson. And so I didn't even know there was a job available like this director of office of Black male student achievement, and she just called me out of the blue, or had her secretary call me out of the blue and say, hey, I want to meet with you. And so I went down to her office thinking, first of all, you get this email from the secretary. I'm thinking like, oh man, I'm in trouble. What have I done now? Why does the superintendent want to meet with me? So I'm nervous the whole time. And I get down there and she just asking me questions about the work that I had been doing at Roosevelt. She asked me about the work that I had been doing at the YMCA around supporting Black students. And when I walked out the office, she was like, well, just so you know, I'm going to offer you this position to lead the Office of Black Male Student Achievement. And I was like, what? I didn't even, like I said, I didn't know there was a position. And so I didn't accept it right there on the spot. I was a little, nervous about that because I knew this was going to be a huge thing. And I didn't know if that was something that I wanted to do because you're going to be out in front. You have to be, doing all this media stuff. And that wasn't something that I was interested in at the time. I just enjoyed doing the work with the young people.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked to my mom, and you know how moms can be. She was like, boy, you better take advantage of this opportunity. Look at all the things that you've done in the past since leading up to this opportunity. And so I eventually said yes. And, as you all know, this was the obviously the second in the country to have a program or a department specifically focused on Black males. And, Hallman, as you said, Coach, as you said, it was about the underachievement of Black males within our system. And for me, I always try to not think about it in a deficit lens because too often all we hear is deficit language when it comes to our Black males. And what I went out and did was 100 days of listening to trying to figure out, okay, what is needed for this department to be successful? Because I didn't want to do it on my own. I didn't want to just say, okay, I got all the answers and whatnot. So I said, nope, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to go out and listen and learn and hear from the young men. I'm going to hear from their families to see what should we be doing. And so I took that information and created a department, but it was based off of what the young people said and what the family said they needed. And so that was a change, right? Too often in education, we kind of think we know all the information and we just kind of go out and say, well, we went to school and we did all these things and we try to implement them, but we never asked the people if that's exactly what they wanted. And so I wanted to do something different. And so I wanted to be intentional about asking those folks about that. And so, yeah, so I created the Office of Black Male Student Achievement. I created a class called Black. It stands for Building Lives, Acquiring Cultural Knowledge. And yeah, we started to get different results with our black males. And I tell people all the time, it wasn't that we even focused on academics, right? Because again, talking about deficits, if you believe that black males are not succeeding because they can't, then we're messed up too as adults, right? So we had to change our beliefs. And so what I found out, or what I knew, but listening to them, is that they were being successful in all other aspects of their lives. It just wasn't necessarily happening in the school space. And so that means we had to turn the mirror on ourselves as adults and saying, what are we doing in these spaces to not get the greatness out of these black males, right? And so that's where I started to try to do things around changing mindsets and beliefs of the adults and the educators, right? Because what I believe about a person typically is how I treat them. So if I don't believe that you're valuable, if I don't believe that you're worthy, if I don't believe that you're smart, then I'm going to treat you like that. So I'm not going to challenge you in the classroom. I'm not going to ask questions to make you think deeper about these certain things. And now you just sit on the sidelines while school is passing you by and eventually life passes you by, right? And so we went about changing that. And I had a great team that helped me do that. So I hired some people to help me do that. Jamel Jackson, I think you all know who Jamel Jackson is. Like I said, Dr. Corey Yeager was another gentleman that helped spearhead those efforts. And we created the class, and then we did professional development, and we started to see a lot of different outcomes. Graduation rates increased, GPAs increased based on that.
What schools?
Yeah. So
I know you had them in high school and middle,
yeah,
right?
high school and middle school. So we started out small, right? The first year we were just basically at Nellie Stone Johnson in South High School, just to kind of get a, we did a pilot just to see what it was like, and those were weekly pullout groups. But what we kept hearing during those weekly pullout groups is the King step kept saying, "Hey, I wish we can have this every day. I wish we could have this every day." And again, as you heard me say earlier, I was listening to them and I said, "Oh, y'all want it every day?" So I had to figure out how to make this class every single day. And so that's when I went and did what I did within the system to get it approved, to get um, folks to buy into this class every single day. And now it's an everyday class that students can earn credit in the program.
Cool,
Mm-hmm.
man. Now you've also been a coach,
Of course.
right? You've coached Howard Pulley. Uh, you had a very successful coaching stint, coaching your daughter at Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Um, what were both of those experiences like? First, what was it like? Coaching. Howard Pulley. You're coaching some of the best players around. What was it? What was that like? And then talk about the experience. I remember you told me a little bit about how, you were the head coach at Roosevelt, and your daughter came up and asked you
Mm-hmm.
to coach. I mean, how often does that happen? I wasn't asking my dad to come coach me, but
But you,
because of the potential conflicts of interest.
oh, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
So I'll start with Howard Pulley. So
yeah,
the first
yeah.
thing with Howard Pulley is, I mean, those players are so good. Like, you got to make sure you're on top of your game as a coach with those players, right? Because
Mhm.
they have some natural abilities. They are, lightning quick, and they can shoot, and they are already committed to the game. And so I had to make sure that I was on top of my game by still doing studying, still doing some research, still trying to make sure that I was becoming a better coach. And what I really found out was some of the things that you had to do with coaching those players is small little tweaks, right? Because they
Mhm.
understood the bigger concept of basketball, and they had the training for the work ethic, the commitment, all those things. You didn't really have to do as much of those things,
Mhm.
but they may not know the intricate parts of the game. So, like, how are you reading screens, and how are you slipping, and what type of decisions do you make when you come off the pick and roll and the defense is helping or the backside's up, right? So you start to get into those small intricate parts of the game to help their skill set and their level increase. But I mean, you got to see great basketball all the time. So while we had great players on our team for
Mhm.
Philly, when we going across the country, we get to see these other players that are now in the NBA. I mean, we played against Derrick Rose, we played against Kevin Durant. I mean, like Devin Booker. I can keep naming them. Like I saw them when they were in high school, and they were just as dominant then as they are as they are now, right? But what I will say is that the thing about Howard Pulley is that we really had really good coaching, right? So you got, like I said, I was on that staff. You had Diedrich Jenkins, Willie Brazil, Dr. Antoine Harris, Jabbar Washington, Keenan Shelton. So you had some really good Percy Wade, some really good coaches that was there. And while we may not had like, I mean, we had talent here, but across the country, there's a whole lot of talent. We were able to compete because we coached our players, right? We taught them the game. We focused on defense, and we really brought that aspect to the quote unquote AAU circuit. Because I know sometimes AAU gets a bad name of saying they just roll the balls out there and they play. Well, we weren't able to do that here in Minnesota. We had to actually coach and prepare and be strategic on how we were out there going against those other cities and programs. But we were able to hold our own for many, many years, and they're still holding their own now. So
Who were some of the players that you coached?
oh, like some of the big names.
It could be
Yeah.
anyone that stood out to you.
Yeah, well, Tyus Jones, Trey Jones,
Right.
Gary Trent Jr. The other kid that really stood out to me was Jermaine Davis. Played at Cooper back in the day. Royce White, obviously I coached Royce White when he was coming through. Oh my goodness, there's Rashid Hageman, Cedric. I mean, yeah. There's like so many lists that you can keep going.
Oh, I know. No, I know you can keep going. No, I just said name a few.
Yeah. Those are some stood out. Cedric and Marcus Williams really stand out to me because they were like defensive stop. I like defense, even though people don't think I like to play defense, but I really like to coach players who play defense. And those two, really locked up, and they were wanting to guard the best players on the other team, and so that's always fun to see and watch. Yeah. So now you're talking about like coaching high school. So so you go from coaching these elite players, right, to now you coaching at your high school.
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to teach the basics of basketball, right? So I had to make sure that I was still able to not think that everybody's at the same level. So now I had to adjust my coaching to fit what my high school space was at. It doesn't mean that I lowered the expectations. That's not what I did, but I had to make sure I met them where they were at to help them reach the expectations that we had. And so that was work. That was work. I say, sometimes people think that because you have these great teams, that's when you do your best coaching. No, it's actually when you have the teams that are not so great is when you do your best coaching because you have to coach every aspect of the game. And so, um, that's what I did at Roosevelt. We didn't always have good teams, right? But there were some years we did have good teams, but we sometimes overachieved because again, we had a commitment. We talked to them about we're gonna be here at the start of the season, but we got to get better every single day, every single game, and so we just kept working to that so that we were playing our best basketball when it came time for sections and regions and all that good stuff. So yeah, that was a good experience. So I was Stockmo's coach his assistant coach for 14 years, and then I took a little break when I started to lead the Office of Black Male Student Achievement. I had to take time off because that needed to have my full attention at that moment. After I got that kind of under my wraps, Stockmo had become the athletic director, and then Rob Mestis was the head coach for about maybe 3 or 4 years. And then he had a different opportunity to go coach somewhere else. And so then I was like, okay, I got the time. Let me step in. And so I coached the boys. And I did that for 3 years. My daughter was coming into high school. This is what you're talking about. My daughter was coming into high school. So my third year, she was a freshman. And after that year, she was like, Poppy, will you come coach me? Come coach the girls. And I was like, ooh, I had never coached girls. Let's be clear. I've never coached girls before. So I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to do that. But I had to reflect and say, well, if Jada is asking you to come coach her and you've coached for all these years, you coached all these young men, how can you say no to your daughter when she's asked you to come coach? Right? But we did have to have a conversation prior to of saying, all right, now, when I'm in the gym, I'm coach. I'm coach, and I'm going to be pushing you and I'm going to be challenging you. if you get upset with me, that's fine, but let's try not to take that at home, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some days it worked out, some days it didn't. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we're human, so we make mistakes in that regard. But we did have that conversation. But for the most part, it was a good experience, and so I'm glad I did that. You know, I think about opportunities to go to the state tournament. So when I was a player at Roosevelt High School, we missed two opportunities to go to state, lost on last second shots at the section finals and didn't get to go. When I was coaching the boys with Stockmo as his assistant, we had two opportunities to go to state, lost on last second shots, wasn't able to go. And so then this past season, I actually made it to state tournament coaching my daughter. And so, as I said in a post, I think I might have put it on Facebook, is that all those opportunities that I missed, not making to the state tournament, it was special to be able to go to the state tournament with my daughter for the first time. Because a couple things, it was my first time going to state, but it was also Roosevelt's girls' first time going to the state tournament. And so that was huge for those young ladies and for that school community to have that experience. And it was great. I mean, it was a great ride. Mitch, you came in, and Coach Hallman, you came as well to come and watch and follow them over the years. I mean, because when we started off, again, like their freshman year, they were getting their tails tore. They was all young, they was little, right? But every year they got better and better and better. So by the time they were seniors, they knew how to handle adversity. They knew how to push through those moments when things are not going our way, but we still know how to fight and grind to get a win.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened in the section games. I think you're at against Como.
Mm-hmm.
Shoot, Como was up on us, but probably for about 7 or 8 points with like maybe 3, 4 minutes left, and we just sat down and grinded that defense out and got some buckets and got some stops, and you know, ended up winning by 1 point.
Yeah.
But it was a tough battle, but they made it and they reached their goal. That was their goal. The whole time by in their sophomore year, they said they want to make it to the state tournament their senior year, and they actually accomplished that goal. And so that was great for me to see. And that team had some really good players. You know, like I said, my daughter Jada Walker.
Mm-hmm.
You had Olivia Wren. You had Jayla Bennett, and really the other solid person is Katie Davis.
Mm-hmm.
Really solid. Yeah, she was a glue. She did a lot of the small things that maybe went unnoticed,
Mm-hmm.
but she was an undersized big, so she guarded every team's big girl, and she was able to rebound, box them out, play solid defense, and score at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Now you every year, I don't know how long it was happening. You have a kind of a showcase, Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm.
How did that come about?
Yeah, so that's you're talking about my guy Tim Williams. So
Yeah.
Tim Williams, and actually it was Tim Williams, Reggie Perkins, and myself talked about this. I mean, it's been going on for 10 years
Mm-hmm.
about what do we do for Martin Luther King Day? You know, basketball's always going on, and we said let's just do a little showcase, and then let's
Mm-hmm.
highlight people in the community that has done a lot of great things
Mm-hmm.
for the sport of basketball.
Okay.
And so we just got teams, and we were trying to really get inner city teams against kind of some outstate teams
Mm-hmm.
to really bring that dream of what Martin Luther King wanted, folks to come together,
Mm-hmm.
you know, people from different walks of life. And so that's what we wanted to create. And that's kind of what we did for what I guess it's been 11 years now
Mm-hmm.
that we've done that. And so I would say Tim Williams is really the mastermind about getting the teams connected and those sorts of things. And my focus was really about how do we make the day feel good. So, you know, between games, we had players from each team read one of Martin Luther King's quotes. We would have the teams come together in the middle of the floor, take a picture together after the game, take a picture together.
Mm-hmm.
Again, building that camaraderie. We would have them eat a meal together in the back. Just again, building that connection so that they can see people from different walks of life and engage with each other. Because that's what we want, right? Basketball for me has helped me meet so many different people. Thinking about going to Marshall, Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
There's not many people of color down there, right? Let's just be clear. However, I met a lot of good teammates that are from Iowa, that are from Montana, that are from Texas, right? That I'm still in communication with and connection with, that we still talk. Actually, we have a group thread with like, I think it's like graduates from 98, 99, 97, 2000, that we all kind of the basketball program that we got a little group thread that we still stay connected on and get updates from the coach who was actually a teammate of mine. He's the head coach at Southwest State now, but that's how we stay connected, right? So we still have this bond because of what we went through together while we were on that campus and on those teams. So I think that's really important.
Mm.
Now you could have, with all the success that you had on the court and off the court, I'm admiring, and I said it to Rob Mesters too, how you came back to your old high school and how you could tell those kids we was here at one point, so they can, so the message can even be much more heartfelt and much more lasting because you wasn't saying this from a distance. You was in those walls, you was in those halls, those type of things like that. You could easily went in elsewhere
Oh, for sure.
and did something. So what made you stay to give back to your community?
That's a very easy response. Y'all, right? When I think about the elders that was in the community that stayed around to help us out, right? So the work that people put in for me, I think about Keith Davis when I was a little knucklehead over at the Northside YMCA and how he would take care of us, right?
Mhm.
I think about these men, Doug Carter, who came and coached, right? I think about these men who were showing up for the community. Kwame, I mean, we can just keep naming Renee, right? I mean, all these different folks. And people took care of me when I was going through my time and trying to make it to where I'm trying to make it to. They spent time with me, talked to me, mentored me, right? And I like to call those people real models. And
Mhm.
real model for me stands for real, everyday, authentic leader, right? Too often we have these role models, but we don't really know who they are. They're people that's on TV and, entertainers and whatnot, but we don't know what their day-to-day lives are. But
Mhm.
you brothers, we knew what y'all day to day life was. We saw y'all at jobs, we saw y'all working, we saw y'all with y'all families. So now we can ask those questions. What's it like to be a man with a family? What's it like to have and hold down this job? So now we get that information back and forth. And I'm saying I need to be that for the next generation coming up, right? So
Mhm.
it's an easy decision to say, let me go and coach at Roosevelt because I saw that modeled around me from many, many different men in the community. And so why wouldn't I follow that path, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a testament to what you all did and laid the foundation for us to replicate that. So I appreciate you all for staying around and being around. I mean, let's just think about it. So I'm 48 right now. Y'all been knowing me since I was like 12 years old, 13 years old, right? So you've got to see my progression. You got to see me when I was a knucklehead. You got to see me when I was right, and you got to see my progression. And I'm sure that makes you feel warm inside of saying, "Oh, look at what they doing now. I remember when they was now. Look at how they have taken the baton and went with it." And I want to be able to see that for the next generation. Like I want to be able to say, "Oh, a kid like Tommy McBrayer, who I coached at Roosevelt, who's doing great things right now with his nonprofit. I get to see them do their thing, saying." Yeah, so I had a little hand in that. I was around for that. I see his growth and look at what he's doing for his community now. That matters, right? That matters. And so I like to have all these real models around. And so how do we keep that going? Well, we got to model it. And you all model that for me and the folks in my generation. And hopefully we're doing that same thing for the generation behind us.
Where'd you get that phrase, deficit speaking? I think that was the word you used. Where'd you get that from, and how did you was able to apply that to your philosophy of life and teaching? Because oftentimes that could be cliches, but you seem to take that and made that into a mantra, into a philosophy. So where did you get that? Where did that came from?
Well, it's just about, I think about deficits. It's just that that's what society has done to black males all the time, right? It's always a negative.
Mhm.
And so I'm saying I'm not gonna have that same narrative, right? Because I know, well, first of all, I should know better as a black male. I should know that I have seen greatness in our black community. And if I'm not uplifting that, then all I'm doing is helping that narrative stay alive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to be very mindful about the words I use in different rooms and spaces that I'm in so that they don't walk out with a deficit mind frame of what black and brown students or young men or young ladies are. And so I think that's just intentional. But again, we know what narratives have been out there and what narratives they want to keep promoting. And so if we don't do, I'm gonna have to say, as you know, critical race theory, right? There
Mhm.
has to be one of the tenets of critical race theory is counter storytelling,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to tell a story that's counter to what the mainstream has been trying to share about us, because typically that's negative about us. So now, what is our duty to get a different story? And that's what I'm trying to do, be a counter storyteller of what it actually is like in our community and in our spaces because that's what's important to me.
Can't believe you're almost 50 years old.
Sounds crazy, right?
Yeah, I'm not even gonna touch that one because I know what that means for me.
No, because you ain't got no gray hair on you.
That's why I got my chin.
That's what it is.
Yeah. Now, what are you doing? What are you doing now? I know you had a very long career in Minneapolis, and you recently moved on,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what are you doing now?
Yeah, so today was actually my first day in the Osseo area school district, and right now I have accepted the role as the director for educational equity in that school district. And so that will be supporting again equity in the schools. So working with our multilingual department, working with our Indian education department, and then working with again our like community outreach programming. And so that's really supporting our families and communities about how are they accessing education, what is the system, how is the system showing up on for their behalf,
Mm,
and if not, then that's my role to step in and say, oh, we need to interrupt these systems that are not doing right by our students, right?
mhm.
And so that's the work that I'll be doing. And today was my first day, so I'll be back there tomorrow, and we will make it work. I think there's a strong team out there. You know, the superintendent, Dr. Kim Heil, and Dr. Brian Bass, who I report to, are really for the work, and so that makes me excited about taking on this opportunity. Because when you got people that support the work, it makes it a little bit easier. Still going to be tough, right? But at least you got people
Mhm.
that's supporting you that can help you think through different things and can help you process and that makes the job a little easier because it's tough when you got to fight inside and you may be fighting this other battle, right?
Mhm.
So having support in that regard, it will be very helpful and beneficial.
Mm. You know, as you look back on all the things that you've done, who are some of the people that influenced you? And I mean, I'm pretty sure there's plenty,
Mm-hmm.
but there are some that's like, you know what, like that person really, you already mentioned your teacher,
Mm-hmm.
but who were some of the other people that like really, really helped you?
Yeah, I would say I kind of mentioned him quickly in passing. Keith Davis.
Mm-hmm.
I would just say what he did for a young brother who didn't have a whole lot of money. He allowed me to get into that YMCA by doing some little jobs and work my payoff, right, to be able to get in there and play basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the piece that he did that was above and beyond is he kept me on his side. Like, so he was still kind of playing basketball and playing different sports, and he would let me go to those spaces with him. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I got to see some of these older men, like I said, the Renee Pulleys, the Butches, right? All these guys being in community with each other, just having those conversations. I'm like, oh, that's what's up, right? I think about another group of guys that took me and my friends on. There was the Downtown Y crew with Marv, Marvin Smith,
Mhm.
and all those guys, Mike Green, and all, right. There was another crew, Kylie. They talked to us and took a liking to us, whatever word you want to use, but
Mm-hmm.
showed us what it's like to be a man. Again, like these people just was, I mean, at the right place at the right time and kept us on a straight and narrow for the most part, right? They was checking in with us. They wasn't trying to be our fathers. They were being just positive men in the community. So those are two that really stand out for
Okay.
me. And then when I think about, if you want to get like really local and immediate, my mom,
Mm-hmm.
right? She was really influential in showing that, even through hard times, you can still make things work and you can push through. I think about her making the decision to move to Minnesota. She was probably what, 27, 28 at the time. We had no family members up here, right?
Mm-hmm.
But she knew that Gary, Indiana was a place that I didn't want to raise my children because it was kind of getting bad at that time. And she made a decision to leave her comfort zone to come up here to give us a better life. And I am so glad that she did because, I don't know what I would be doing if I would have been staying in Gary, Indiana. You never know. But
Mm-hmm.
I got to get an education. I got to play basketball in college. I mean, I'm sitting here as a PhD. Um, Never would have thought in a million years that I would have a PhD, right? You know what I mean? Like, you understand that? Like that's not something that I had thrown out there when I was in high school or anything. That's something
Mm-hmm.
that came later on in life. And so that's really important that you have those opportunities and those people. And my mom really like embodied that throughout my time, just watching her and listening to her. She would probably say I'm living her dream because I know she wanted to be a scholar, but
Hmm.
having kids and change that trajectory for her. So I get to live out some of her dreams, and that's important. That's powerful for me to be able to do that.
Okay.
Now, we always offer our guests an opportunity to
Yeah.
share some words or nuggets of wisdom to our audience, because this is a conversation. This is not, we aren't trying to teach anybody, we're not trying to sway anybody, but the purpose of this is to highlight and have people who are doing things that may don't get that kind of light shine on them. So we give you the opportunity to say what you like to say to our audience.
Yeah, as we wrap it up.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. I wish I had told me this before. I'd have had something prepared. Now I'm on the spot here. Um, I guess I would say for me, what's really important is think about what it is you want to accomplish, and don't let nothing sway you from that, right? Because there's going to be so many different obstacles, hurdles, and all those different things, but you have to be consistent in what you're trying to accomplish, and staying solid on your path is important. But in order to stay solid on your path, you got to get people around you who are also on that, not necessarily on the same path, but on a path to somewhere, right? They have goals, they
Hmm.
have aspirations, right?
Hmm.
You want to be around people who will challenge your thinking. You want to be around people who will set an example for you. And so to me, that's the wisdom that I had. And again, my friend group that I had from high school, I still have it, and we still check in on each other. We still ask each other questions. We are still pushing each other to be better than what we are. And that, I mean, that's lovely because they ain't gonna cut you no, well, they ain't cut you no slack, bro. They gonna come at you. If you did something wrong, they gonna, hey, Walker, what you doing, bro? You right? But we need that in our lives, right? And so I'm glad that I have those brothers that can do that for me and that I can do that for them. And that helps me stay, kind of centered and square on that. And the last thing is, I just hope that I'm being a real model and an example for my own children. I got 4 kids,
Hmm.
married, got a wife. And so if I'm not doing that at home, then I'm all talk. And I want to make sure that I'm doing the same thing that I'm doing at home, that it's also happening in the community. So I got to make sure home is taken care of first. So trying to be a good husband, trying to be a good father of my 4 children. But we all make mistakes sometimes. But knowing that if I can be a listener and be willing to adjust and grow, then things can work out right, work out fine. And so that's what I try to do. So that's what I would say to people. Try to do that.
Well, thank you for letting us be in your life, because you could have pushed us away. You could have whatever you wanted to do. You chose to allow us to be a part of your life, and we appreciate that. And definitely proud of seeing you where you at. I remember when you was a knucklehead,
Exactly.
so that's fun, and to see you now, Dr. Walker.
That's right.
That
That's
is that's something I'm proud to be able to witness, because we didn't get, some of us don't get a chance to witness the growth in young people from a young age to where they're at now. Sometimes we get to see them in the wrong way, and so we're very happy. Dr. Michael Walker, appreciate you stopping by on Blacklight on Sports. Don't let this be a stranger. We appreciate you being a part of us. And we hopefully that our listeners and viewers have learned something from you tonight that they can take away. My name is Charles Hallman,
I'm Dr. Mitchell Palmer-McDonald.
and read us on the newspaper. We are there every week, but also watch us on Blacklight on Sports. Thank you very much.